Hey guys, my name is Gerard, welcome to my channel. Today's video is basically me designing a banner for my YouTube channel in Procreate. So starting off, I looked up the dimensions for the banner and created a canvas at that size, then used the drawing guide tool to approximate the area I should try to fit the important visuals in. When I tried to upload it as a banner, I realized it probably would have been smarter to upload an image that gives more exact dimensions, but it still worked out in the end. Once I'd gotten the approximate size, I turned off the drawing guides and worked from the grid that I had sort of created with the drawing guides. Now, I had a lot of ideas for potential banners, but the way I ended up landing on this idea specifically is that I'm currently in art school and taking a perspective art class, and we're currently working on 2-point perspective, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to get a little more practice. Besides, a magical castle floating in a vibrant night sky seemed pretty dope. In the sketch, I tried experimenting with different visuals surrounding the castle, but I ultimately decided to keep things pretty simple. I tend to leave out some detail in my digital sketches unless there's key information, like the lines keeping the bricks of the castle parallel to the plane of the earth, because I'm pretty comfortable adding details in the ink layer. Once I'd gotten the sketch of the castle itself, I tried to make it fit within the bounds of the center box I'd created, since that box will be visible on all devices: phone, computer, TV, whatever. I didn't care too much about fitting the whole thing, I just wanted to make sure that whatever did show looked good on its own. Next, I created the pattern in the stars to spell out my name. I was more careful to make sure that that would definitely fit in the center box, since cropped words would be pretty jarring. With that core image all sketched, I turned down the opacity of that layer and went in to do the line art. As you can see, there are certain details I started adding on this layer that weren't in the sketch. But when I got to the bricks on the castle, I realized I wanted to make sure the perspective was accurate. To fix that, I just went back to the sketch layer and added more lines, connecting to the appropriate vanishing point before I put the inked bricks in. After I had the horizontal lines, I just kind of winged it with the vertical lines. There are ways to make more consistent spacing in perspective like this, but I didn't care enough to do that since I felt like different sized bricks or stones or whatever would be fine in this context. I thought about putting something in the windows or leaving them open to potentially show light coming from inside the castle once I got to the colors and lighting and stuff, but I think the black actually gives a nice little break from the detail-heavy walls around them. The castle itself was definitely the most precise inking I did. Organic shapes like the tree, the grass, the floating earth, it's all generally pretty forgiving if you don't stick perfectly to the sketch. I deliberately made the lines for the underside of the grass thicker and darker to add depth. Although, if I were to do this over, I would probably put more thought into my light source before I committed to where I was going to make those lines thicker. To make the dirt more interesting, it was pretty easy to just add some lines that define the form. Once I had that, I inked the stars in black, knowing I was going to mess around with that again later. Again, with organic shapes being forgiving, I was able to completely improvise the floating bits of earth in the empty space. Those will only be visible in the TV version of the YouTube banner, but I didn't want the TV version to have a ton of unused space. With the ink all done, I went in and messed around with the background color. It's not ideal to do digital coloring on a totally white background, especially in this case where I wanted to play around with the sky. It's supposed to be nighttime or outer space, however you want to look at it, and choosing my other colors was made a lot easier by being able to compare them to the overall backdrop. Then I selected the castle and ground and filled that with gray for a few reasons. One of which was that I wanted to immediately play around with more color in the sky, and I didn't want to distract myself when I went in on the rest of the flats later. It also allowed me to make sure that any interesting effects in the sky wouldn't end up hidden. I really enjoy colorful skies, especially going from pink to purple to blue, so of course that's what I did here. Later on, I messed around with that a little more, which I'll explain soon. First, though, after I had the basic design of the sky, I colored the castle. When you're going for a nighttime or dark look, you actually don't want to choose extremely dark colors. One of my professors told me to think about it in terms of movie nighttime. The audience still needs to see what's going on, especially if you've put all this work into adding cool details. It would suck for that to be hidden. I struggle with this a little in general, and I think that's a combination of liking dark colors and also being somewhat light sensitive, so I try to be conscious about that as I work. Also, try to remember that you can play around with light a lot after you've got your flats figured out, so don't stress too much about if your flats are dark enough or light enough on their own. I wasn't sure what color I wanted the roof shingles to be, so I just tried different things that I thought would work. If you're ever unsure about something, I seriously recommend playing around and actually trying your ideas instead of just thinking about them. Speaking of messing around with things, here's where I went back in on the colors of the sky in the background. I tried a bunch of different layer types and eventually decided on vivid light. Happy with that, I started on the shadows. I did a clipping mask multiply layer over the flats and filled it, then carved away where the light would hit. I imagined the light source coming from somewhere in the upper left, maybe not totally in the corner, but sort of in that vicinity. There are a lot of different ways to digitally make light and shadow effects, and this is actually not how I typically do it, but it's what I felt would work best in this context. I duplicated the multiply layer and erased a lot more so it would only cover the darkest shadow areas. Then I smudged some of the edges where I felt it would look better. Finally, we're back to the stars I mentioned that I was going to change. I put a clipping mask over the ink layer and colored the stars white. Then, on a different layer, I connected the stars lightly. I didn't want my name to be the only stars in the sky, especially with so much unused space. Sometimes when I draw stuff with stars, I like to do this thing where I look up the Braille alphabet and vaguely base the shape of constellations on words made with that. Here it's just the words art and music, since those are what I do. Procreate has some light brushes, and I just used one of those to make the stars themselves. And with that, we're pretty much done. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great day. Bye, friends.